Waiting for some paperwork, Sam. It's going to be a couple minutes. I'm going to call our meeting to order for June 17th. Again, thank you for those that are here. Sorry for the little delay. We were working on some paperwork to consider some of the changes that we've been talking about the last couple days. There are more copies coming that'll be available for the public here in a couple minutes. And we're going to go ahead and start with a moment of silence, and I'll start with Supervisor Crandall.
Yes, so I have a moment of silence for Richard Leland Powell, known as Dickie. Born on October 10th, 1952, he passed on April 6, 2026. His celebration of life will be held this Saturday, June 20th at 11 a.m. at the Bachelor Valley Grange, 9355 Government Street. If you didn't know him, he usually would, at one of my first election, he and Hippie Joe were out on the streets with my signs, getting everybody to go and vote and support me. He and a couple other guys would always be sitting right by Double D's on a bench. So that's just the normal small town thing. So just he'll be missed, and his celebration of life will be this Saturday.
Thank you. And I want to offer another moment of silence for the 8 people that were lost in the B-52 crash that happened in California on Monday morning. That included military members, government employees, some defense contractors, and employees of Boeing. Is there any further this morning? Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor Sabatier, would you lead us in the pledge?
Ready? We begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll move on to our timed items. The first 4.1 for public input. This is for anything that is not on the agenda, so not related to budget. If there's anybody in the room for regular public comment, not related to budget. Thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Board. This is not related to anything specific to any budget item, but it is related to a continuation of the comment I made yesterday about the need to do better. If you recall, back in December, during the issue with CDD, I said that we used to have a saying in our audit department that mistakes this big don't happen by mistake. It takes effort. I encourage the board to reflect on how we got to where we are. I heard some concerning comments yesterday about, well, we just found out about this, and so we have time to correct it. I understand where that might be coming from. However, I would respectfully disagree. Your own charts show that this has been 3 years in the making. I also heard, well, we had the money and we spent it, and back then that was okay. And I respectfully understand where that's coming from, but I also think that misses the point, because when the money stopped coming in, you kept spending it as if it was still there. I mentioned in December that there are supposed to be checks and balances and controls to protect the monies, to make sure they're properly spent and to identify issues and risks before they become problems. Those weren't being followed, and I am still concerned that they're not being adhered to. You had a 6-month budget review. That's a tripwire. If somebody is not on budget, that's one of your first opportunities to figure out why they're struggling, what the problem is, and maybe have a corrective action. When I pointed out that one of the departments was something like 50% over budget, the response I got from the board was, well, people can't predict the future. I think in the light of the fiscal issues we're having now, that is not an appropriate response. we have these controls in place. The last thing I would suggest is on your reserves, it came out a few months ago that there really aren't any controls because it's not real money. I think that needs to stop, especially now in the fiscal light. If you have something that's earmarked, that's fine, but if you go over that, that's a tripwire. And that should cause scrutiny. We're not seeing that. It's part of the reason you are where you are. It's part of the reasons we're now talking about having to let people go, because these things didn't happen all of a sudden. It's been taking a couple years. So please do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room? Not seeing any. Do we have anyone online? Guest.
Sky Lewa, Pillsbury Family Farms. And I've been thinking a lot about trust lately and what it means. Not just to trust in one person, but to trust in any one department, but the trust in my local government itself. Public trust is quite a strange thing. Trust takes years to build, but only seconds to lose. And most people don't expect perfection from their government. They understand that mistakes happen. Budgets are difficult. They understand that there's competing priorities and difficult decisions. But what the public struggles with the most is the uncertainty. They struggle when decisions appear to happen behind closed doors. They struggle when the questions go unanswered, and they struggle when the issues affect the public seem to be delayed again and again, while other matters move forward without hesitation. Over time, people begin to wonder whether the process matters as much as the outcome. Once they start asking questions and they don't receive an answer, the trust starts to crumble. And the leadership is not just about approving agendas or managing budgets. It is about setting a moral example. It is about demonstrating that the transparency matters even when it's inconvenient. Accountability matters even when it's uncomfortable. That the public trust matters even when there is no legal requirement to earn it. But the public watches more than you think. They watch what questions get answered, what questions get avoided. They watch what gets prioritized, and they watch what gets postponed. Sometimes the leadership isn't revealed by what the government chooses to do, but by what it chooses not to do. Not by the issues that receive immediate attention or issues that get pushed to another meeting, another month, or another year. But eventually, the community starts to notice the patterns, not because anyone told them to, but because the public is actually remarkably good at recognizing when something keeps getting kicked down the road. At some point, every governing body faces the same questions. Are you making decisions because they are right, or are you making the decisions because they are easier? And it's not a legal question or a budget question, but it is a question of the values that you choose to represent. And the values are ultimately what the people remember long after you guys leave the positions. Muleham.
Thank you. Do we have anything further online? Sterling? Is she unmuted? Sterling, are you there?
Yes, now I'm unmuted. So I have a broad spectrum about the budgets, not one specific thing that you guys are talking about today. I did go over how we're going into our deficit. I do want to bring it to the attention that once we approve all these, we're going to be left with $3 million in our general fund. We need to start thinking about that as we're going into fire season. If an emergency was to happen here in our county, I mean, prime example, we got the Robin Lane spill where we had to pay $2 million out of our general fund to help the residents there. Leaving $3 million in our general fund coming up to major fire season is not, I don't think, a very wise decision. We are approving a lot of things for the general fund. I know that the budgets is a lot more than just a general fund, but the general fund is what pays the wages, the compensation, and wages and compensation are a major factor into these deficits at 61%. I brought that to your attention yesterday. Many of these raises and labor agreements and staffing decisions being implemented today were approved in prior years. At some point, these trends have had to be visible. Did we become accustomed to COVID funding that no longer is available? And if these deficits were foreseeable, why were additional costs approved? We also can't ignore revenue side of this equation. Businesses create the tax base that funds county services, salaries, and benefits, yet residents can walk through our communities and see vacant storefronts and closed businesses. If we continue making it difficult for businesses, including small businesses and the cannabis industry, to survive here, we should not be surprised when revenues decline. Um, we won't have any money for our roads. We're depending solely on, grant fund money to pay for these things. So another thing I would like to bring to your guys' attention is that the county's own budget presentation shows millions of dollars have been borrowed internally in recent years to maintain cash flow for a while, waiting for property taxes. At the same time, raises, benefits, and new positions continue to be approved. We all understand that our employees deserve fair compensation, but at some point, does responsible spending begin? These projected deficits did not happen overnight. These are the results of decisions made over multiple years, according to the county's own. God, sorry, I just lost my spot. Anyway, for years that we've known this was coming, we keep making the decisions to keep adding all these extra hires and raises, and it's depleting our general fund. And yesterday, you guys approved a lot. I mean, 10 million just in compensation. It's raising faster than inflation. So please take that into consideration. Responsible spending needs to happen now for not just us right now, but future generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close public comment, and we're going to go back to our 4.2 item, which is 9 a.m. budget hearing, consideration of recommended budget for fiscal year 26-27 for County of Lake and special districts governed by the Board of Supervisors, Day 3. And I believe we're going to start with an update from administration. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Deputy CAO Moreno.
Good morning, thank you. So here are the updates that were discussed throughout the past couple days. We will start with an updated forecast at what it looks like if we implement, first cost saving options. Just to reiterate our previous recommendations, hiring freeze effective July 1, authorize admin staff to reduce general fund budgets by 5 to 10% depending on FBA. Attrition was added yesterday, and then no extraordinary requests to general fund.
Question, Casey? Go ahead.
So I know you said the word at the end, general fund. Is this all departments, or is this general fund departments?
For which one? For just the extraordinary requests or everything?
All of these things, no new positions that recommended, hiring freeze, like these options. Are you offering those options as general fund or as all, or?
Mainly general fund. However, it may go into effect for non-general fund departments depending on how funding may change before we come to the board again.
Okay.
Go ahead, CAO.
Thank you, Chair. Right now, this is what we recommend only related to general fund. When we get to final and do our reevaluation in December, it could expand to all departments. No, the final is in September. The reevaluation is early December.
Okay.
Okay. So first option is a 5% reduction. So the revenues have not changed at all. We are still maintaining our projections. What has changed is the expenditures. So the payroll and benefits is taking the estimated actuals from the current year, 25-26, and taking a 5% reduction there. So what that is no, with the hiring freeze and no new positions being added, that amount is maintaining steady with the 5% reduction. So as attrition happens, positions may be removed or just not filled. And then that does include the COLA that was approved by the MOUs. Also, the operating expenditures are reduced by 5%, and that is taking the actuals, not the budget. So here's a graph showing where we would end. So with a 5% reduction, it would give us another year before we would be in a deficit for the fund balance available. Option 2 is along the same lines, but with a 10% reduction. So taking payroll and benefits and the operating expenditures and reducing by 10%. And that gives us until fiscal year 28-29 to reevaluate, we'll be reevaluating throughout, but to be looking at a negative fund balance, assuming there are no additional changes made throughout there. And lastly, option number 3, which is our recommended option, which is what's needed to balance through fiscal year 30-31. And again, that's assuming that there's no other factors that come into play, but that does give us time to course correct. So what this represents is the payroll and benefits remain as is right now with the 3.5% increase that was approved through the MOU. And operating expenditures are what they're at right now with a 1.5% increase on top of a 10% decrease. So the 1.5% would be the CPI increase. So it really limits our buying power. However, departments are encouraged to go out for grants and outside funding and not rely solely on general fund if they can. And this does also have the hiring freeze in effect. And here's a graph showing, and that's assuming no additional changes are made, but really forecasts are only good for a couple years, and so this will give us time to course correct throughout that time.
What percentage of reduction is that?
That is a 10% reduction.
Vice Chair.
It's a 10% reduction in expenditures, but not workforce.
Correct.
That's a hiring freeze and attrition. I mean, it's going to be really difficult to have a 10% reduction when we're seeing the increases just in insurance alone. So
Absolutely.
it is going to be a hard path, but it's something that we have to do.
And revenues did remain the same throughout all the options because revenues just aren't increasing at the same rate that everything else is.
Right. So I do have another question. Is this forecast because community development is only one of our departments?
Correct.
It gets talked about a lot, but it is only one. And so is this projection keeping community development at the same level or contemplating changes there?
So that does not include any changes until we have the consultant come in and reevaluate. So it is as it stands right now.
Okay. And then also we talked about the leakage with the grants and repayment. This is bringing everything back into line.
Yes.
Tight.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now to go over some of the changes that have been discussed. So through Sheriff Marine Patrol is basically just a budget transfer, so there's no additional funds that are requested, but here are the changes to each object code. So position allocation changes. There were 4 new positions requested to the district attorney. And we do not recommend those positions be added at this time. The way they were able to make it work within their budget was to take a significant salary savings to unfilled positions throughout the year, and to project that you're going to have unfilled positions, but then add positions doesn't really make sense. So we do not recommend those at this time. Sheriff Administration and Sheriff Jail, both those positions were supposed to be there. They were just inadvertently omitted from the position allocation. They are budgeted, so we do recommend those be added in. Probation, the Staff Service Analyst 1, limited term. We do recommend that because it is not a drain on general fund and is a Prop 64 fully reimbursed position. And then Mental Health, Budget Unit 4014. The Outreach and Prevention Specialist, permanent part-time, those have been requested to be removed, so we do recommend removing those.
Question?
Quick question, since you didn't put the number for behavioral health, and I know it's 2, is it 1 for each of the other ones?
Yes.
Or are there more than 1?
No, it's 1.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. So extraordinary request for capital assets. Probation has requested $220,599 be added in for a capital asset. And that is carryover from prior year when there were some realignment funds that were not carried over for them. So that we do recommend approving. Roads has the funds from geothermal, budget unit 1918. And so we do recommend moving 1.5 million to roads to fund the Socrates Mine Road PM 1.0. The auditor has the ERP Workday implementation. So we're looking at different funding sources because the technology reserve is currently out of funds. And so we are proposing cannabis be used to fund the Workday project. We checked the revenues yesterday, and actually it's about $1 million higher than what it was when we checked, and we're working on the budget. And so the additional funds there would be available to transfer for the Workday project. And lastly is the Lamson Airport budget unit 3123, which is capital assets. 1.2 million. It would be a temporary loan for cash flow. 3,000 of that is a county match, and we would recommend pulling that from a general fund reserve, probably 153, which is the building and infrastructure reserve, and then that money would be paid back.
Vice Chair?
What's the time frame on that repayment?
I do not have that, Lars.
Maybe the director can provide some information.
Lars Ewing, Public Works Director. We anticipate it to be this fiscal year. We already have bids. We're waiting on the actual final award from the FAA, and so construction could be theoretically this fall, dependent upon weather. Could be over the winter season. We are dependent upon reimbursement from both FAA, so the feds, and Caltrans through the state. So dependent upon their time frame, I certainly don't want to stand up here saying that we will receive the money this fiscal year. But the project is not excessively long. I think it's a month, maybe 2 at most. So if I were a betting man, I would say this fiscal year having the money back. Keeping in mind that the actual out-of-pocket cost is a 0.25% that we're getting. So certainly money added value to the county to get that grant coming in. One other topic, if I just while I'm here on the road project, if you don't mind, it's a minor point, but it does call out PM 1.0, post mile 1.0. There's actually two projects up there, so I would just want to ensure that we're not limited to that funding on that one site. The combination of both sites, 1.0 and 2.4, are approximately $2 million. So we'll be splitting it between those two. So we're looking at it as one project. So I want to not be limited when we go to send the funding into the auditor controller that they would focus on just that one project. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I've been collecting more information, especially in light of some of the information that we receive from special districts on just costs of all the different softwares that we have. And at this moment in time, I don't know what the money is for. Those are large numbers. I know we've probably spent about 2.3 million or even 3 million for consultants and implementation. But the overall cost, and this is only what I know, is we're spending close to $1 million a year on licensing fees on software. And that's OpenGov, Workday, CAMS, Tyler, Naviline, Tyler for a different department. I really feel we need to understand what the cost is, because nobody has provided us the cost. And I would like to place those on hold unless it's stuff we've already spent. If we've already spent it, we should pay our bills. But if it's not something we spent, we need to really, nobody has the cost to the county, and yet we're talking about where can we cut, where can't we cut. And so I would like to get that within the next 30 to 60 days. I think that's an easy ask. People have that in their budgets. We have that in our accounting software somewhere. And I think we really need to understand what can work in that program so that we know it's not continuous cost. Yes, it may take time to get the implementation in the program, and what can't and why. And I feel the board is very much in the dark. And when I'm already up to 870,000 and I'm saying it's probably around $1 million, that is a huge cost that potentially we do not need to borne on an annual basis. This is per year, that's it. It's not a one-time fee. So I would like to, whatever's spent, I don't want to hold back because we owe bill. We need to pay our bills. I don't want to be that kind of agency. But I think we need to have a brief pause and in a small time frame, get that information back to us.
Vice Chair?
Well, yes, knowing that some are general fund, some are not, but I think we do need a holistic picture of all of the purchases and ongoing subscriptions.
So now, okay, as far as Workday is concerned, all costs have been disclosed. Every
Right, but we
aspect
want to
of that,
see when everything is together, because,
with the external software, and so,
right, and so we talked a little bit about it. Yeah,
right, okay. And
yeah, we
so-
talked a little bit about understanding the cumulative costs and with
Right.
the technology committee, so
But
that.
the work on the, but.
Because we don't have a
ongoing
list
work.
of all of our softwares right now. And
Right,
that's
right,
what we want to see. And we want to see, so we can build our strategy of when Workday will be bringing in these other departments, how long do we need to have them on other software platforms, or if they have to stay on other that's what we really want to see. And I think we covered that in our last conversation
But-
yesterday or the day before.
Except with learning more,
Yes.
because I believe the cost for the Tyler software is $160,000 a year. And it could be something that we share if we could get it to work inside Workday rather than have it separate bills and keep stacking and stacking.
So none of that, though, will affect phase one. So just because when we're talking about pausing, we have work, we were about to go live, there were just a few loose ends to tie up, and so we're trying to train and everything, and so when we say pause, I just need to understand what work we're saying to pause.
We're not talking about pausing. We need to see everything together.
Okay,
So Workday is
so the
happening.
work is continuing, but we're gathering all the information
We have a pause
at
on the
same
purchase
time.
of other softwares.
And
that's going to
that is,
TBC,
yes, my
correct?
personal opinion. Until I know how much we're actually spending on everything, I think we just need a pause, because now we're going to throw more money at something that we've been in the dark. We've been asking since November. I'm just taking that extra step saying, I need to pause, because I'm saying yes to something that I don't know what it is.
What did we ask in November that affects this today? That, I'm
To
sorry.
get information on the cost of this implementation and everything
Now,
else.
that has been provided, but this holistic entire county listing has not been provided, and that was-
And that emerged from our conversation in March, which
Right.
took a little while to get to since
And is
November.
that IT? Is that something that IT's been directed
So
to?
what I would like to do, and I'm just stating what I would like to see.
Yeah, no, and I'm-
but
and I'm
what I
good with
think
that.
is easy to get a consensus on is, Mr. Carter sent out a survey And I think that we need to mandate from the board that this survey be responded to by all department heads so we can get a full list of all the software being used, because we've tried before and it doesn't always work out to receive that information. We have the power to say, you have to do this. And I think that we need to have that consensus right here from this board, because it starts with having that understanding and knowledge. And if we don't collect all that, then we're always going to continue to walk in the dark.
Mr. Carter?
So that survey did go out and we can get the results soon. I would actually like to, with your board's permission, send out a new survey with just that one question, because what was sent out may or may not have gotten exactly the data you're looking for.
Are we good with
That would, yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah,
But we need to have that information.
yes. So I believe we have consensus on that.
And I do think that there is a listing, because our IT director does send out that request annually, and so I think we have a base listing, but it's in IT to start with. So that information is there, I just didn't realize it was an outstanding question till right now.
Okay, anything else, Supervisor?
At this moment, I've
Okay.
expressed my opinion.
Go ahead.
Okay, so a few new requests. So Watershed Protection District, Budget Unit 8109. The previously board approved for PG&E engineering, that was not added into the budget, so we are requesting that be added in. It was earmarked within cannabis, and that is where the funding will come from, so we do recommend that. And then the $270,000 for the rent monitors. There is available funding within cannabis in their 30% bucket that they share with various other departments. And so if your board does decide to move forward with funding the rent monitors, that is where we would pull the money from. However, it is important to note that this is not a long-term solution and is just a one-time allocation.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, I want to see a plan from Water Resources on how to, which grants. 'Cause I know you've had successes in the past, and then there were some misses. And I want to see a volunteer program, and I want to see fee increases. I hope the rest of the board, you can, I hope you agree with me, but this has to become a sustainable program. This is one time. We bailed you out last year. We're bailing you out again. It can't happen again.
And yes, I agree with that, because this program, it's important we have to have these monitors, but we've got to figure out a way to have it self-sustaining, because this is now the second year. We had to give $400,000, I believe, last year, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I'm in support of all of that. I'd actually like to see a plan back before we do this review in December. So I'm thinking like 4 months, we need to get an update if the board, whatever the board decides. We've got to hear a plan on how we're gonna fund this, and that would, I am in agree. I know fees aren't popular, and I think, we can come up with a structure that is different for county residents than it is for outside folks coming up here, so I'm in agreement with
Yeah,
that.
and just one more thing.
Supervisor Sabat, or did you have more?
Also, I want to see a plan on decontamination units and how we actually bring that to fruition here.
I fully agree. I was going to say the exact same thing, but what I would say is 90 days. Come
Yeah.
back in 90 days, because there's an implementation timeline. Once we approve a plan, it's going to take some time to make impact, and then we'll be right back where we start having our monitors out there, and then we won't necessarily be ready. So I would say please come back in 90 days with a plan on how it is that we can get that annual revenue specifically to continue the process.
And 90 days works for me.
And I appreciate the mention of the decontamination.
I was going to
We got to
mention
get
that
started, and I don't know if Blue Ribbon Committee can help with that. We need to talk with our state representatives, but this is a protection of state waters, so I think this is a larger conversation than just an internal conversation.
And so just so I'm clear, the 270,000 is what it costs for the entire fiscal year, of ramp monitors? I'm trying to get
Like 6 months.
clear. But they only work 6 months mostly. Is the 270, will that cover all we need for next fiscal year, is what I'm getting at?
So, Pawan Upadhyay, Lake County Water Associate Director. So, to address it briefly, I think it doesn't cover the whole year. It will take a little bit more, but we can cover the rest of the cost.
So that's only for, not even for the whole year, okay,
He said 6 months.
6 months.
But they'll cover the rest of the cost.
Yeah.
What is the total program cost per fiscal year?
So, in our grant which we submit, in that the RAM monitor cost, like 2 years before was 400,000
Per year,
per year. Yeah.
okay.
And you have some funding.
We do get some funding from like the sticker sales or other places, but that's very minimal compared to what it should be.
Okay, thank you, Director. Anything else from the board at this point? Not hearing any, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So next is the capital asset changes. For Watershed Protection District, there was a request to move funds from 2830 to 6274, but I missed what the amount was and what project.
Yeah. So the amount for that is 40,000, and that is to purchase the equipment, and we would be moving it to capital fixed asset.
Okay, thank you. And then next is the mental health.
Can I
Yes,
I feel like, can I ask, what is the equipment?
So it's a masketer, like which is an attachment to a skid steer and used for vegetation management.
Thank you.
So for mental health, for the South Shore Expansion Project, funded through the BHCIP bond grant, there is $4,014,467,000 that will be brought in as revenue and allocated to the account 6313 for the project. Sheriff Administration, Budget Unit 2201 is requesting, it's not a change, but just to move from the capital asset listing from 2202 to 2201, which is where the money is budgeted. There was an item on there for a throw phone. Sheriff Rural and Small Communities, 2206, for the new facility for year 1 and year 2 through 5, requesting to add that on. And then Emergency Services is not a monetary change, but just to rename in the capital asset listing to change lines 2 to fiscal year 25 and line 3, which is not up there, to 26. And that concludes my presentation.
go ahead, Supervisor Sabatier.
Just a question, because I thought it was 7 million for the B chip. It said 4 million twice. Is that 8 million altogether? Or did it just show up twice because it's moving from one to another?
It's putting it in the revenues and then in the appropriation.
Okay, so it's only 4 million that is
Correct.
being used this year? Okay.
Anything further from admin?
One additional item that was discussed was with museums with 7201 and 7202. So there is actually no changes there. 7201 was previously approved. 7202 needs to be approved once we make that motion. But there is no change.
Okay. Anything further from the board, or I can open the public for comment on this portion? Okay. I'll open it to, did you want to say something, Director?
So I think yesterday we had another request for the PG&E engineering works, which is for additional 50,000. So I think yesterday it came up that we can use some of our reserves to cover that. I think we would be fine to use 50,000 if needed from there, if that can be added to the budgets.
From
So you
your
want to
reserve?
reduce your reserves by 50,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
8109
Watershed protection.
watershed protection list.
I believe you had 79 or $89,000 in general that you can.
General one, but there is also a specific one for the Middle Creek project, which is 250,000 something.
Okay.
So I think 50,000 can be taken from there.
Okay. I'll go ahead and open to the public for comments on this presentation, these discussions of these changes.
Good morning, Board. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. It sounds like a reasonable plan. One thing I observed here is that there's quite a bit of money that's being taken from the cannabis reserve, and I would recommend a full picture of what that reserve is going to look like going forward. The reason I bring this up is that I pointed out in last fiscal year, 24-25, there were allocations to various departments for various projects. And when I opened a PRA request and worked with the auditor controller's office, it looked like, for the most part, the monies were going where they should have gone. For example, Child Support Services was allocated $330,000. They spent exactly, or withdrew exactly $330,000. Dredging was allocated $100,000. They took out exactly $100,000. The board in your discretionary fund was allocated $500,000. You took out just a little bit more. Copter took out less than what it was allocated. Sheriff's Department took out less. But CDD took out 41% more than what was allocated. They were allocated $500,000. They took out almost $800,000. And so I think a bigger picture of what's going on with the geothermal reserve, what that's going to look like at the end, how much was actually allocated, because as I mentioned in my earlier public comment, that's a tripwire. So if someone's taking out more than what were approved to take out, that should be cause to have additional scrutiny. So if you need more for your ERP, or if you need more for this or that, and you're having to rely on the cannabis budget, or reserve, excuse me, you should only be taking out what the board's authorized. And I view this as a recommendation of that, but I don't see the full picture. I only see, an add and a subtract, but I think a full picture would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room?
Good morning. Thomas Hardig, Water Resources, Invasive Species Program Coordinator. Honorable Board, I wanted to just bring it to your attention. We are currently working on a new fee schedule for our quagga stickers. Also, a fee schedule for our tournaments to help push some of the burden for the cost of our Muscle Dog program to the tournaments. We are doing this with our community in mind, so we are trying to reduce the burden that we charge our residents while still making our program more sustainable. So this is in the work, and we will be coming to you shortly with a schedule for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Anyone online, Carolyn?
Yes, we do have Sterling online.
Sterling, go ahead.
I want to thank for that presentation and trying to bring our numbers down. There's still some concerns because we still show deficit even at the end. The last slide that shows without getting rid of any of the benefits and wages and stuff, it shows a less deficit. So then my concern is what things will be cut out, what positions will be cut out. Are they going to be important positions? I don't think we should be cutting out any important positions. I do agree with Bruno. We need to look into how much we're spending into all this technology. If there's that many different ones out there and it's not being presented in this budget as a whole, it's something that should be done. So then it's more transparent for the public, and then we can probably consolidate and probably save a lot of money on that. I do appreciate them trying to bring the deficit down, but there's still the hardcore factor that there's still a deficit no matter what. And spending over the past years has put us into this position. So no matter what, we need to start cutting back on what needs to be cut back on and not cut back on what we do need in this county. Capital assets is another thing where we're spending those are very critical. We have infrastructure, and the most important infrastructure in our county is dilapidating. That's sewer, roads, and water mains. So we should be putting general funds, we should be putting capital assets and saving that money, because in order for growth, we have to have the foundation of a house has to be perfect to have a good house. If the foundation of the house has a crack, something is to happen, that house will fall apart. And those infrastructures, sewer, water, and roads are our foundation for our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. Supervisor Sabatier.
Yeah, two things. I had mentioned $1 million yesterday, and you weren't sure if we found $1 million or if it was already balanced with that $1 million less in the contingency fund. Just wanted to see if there was a response to.
So it's going to stand as it is right now. We did not find another $1 million to put in there. However, at final, depending on what fund balance available is, we may be adding it back in, requesting.
And I wasn't looking to add it in. I just wanted to make sure that.
Yes.
Okay. And just, I appreciate the outlook on where we're going with the potential options. I do have concerns about the outlook itself, where it estimates that we are going to have this continuous increase in property tax for the next 7 years. And I was doing some of the math. Some of it was as much as almost 5% increase in property tax revenue. I'm concerned that it wasn't as conservative as I would like to look at, with potential lulls in our property tax revenue, because it's been increasing quite a bit for the last few years, and typically there is a lull that happens somewhere in there. So obviously we'll be looking at it every year, but I'm concerned about the projection and hoping that we keep tracking it and looking at it and adjusting based on the needs. But I have a feeling we'll be adjusting whatever the options are that we're looking at.
Thank you. I'm not sure who is next.
Go ahead.
You were.
She was. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Okay, well, Bruno, you mentioned revenue, I'm sorry. And I was just thinking, in looking at this and seeing revenue, just wanted to bring up the 50% reduction in cannabis cultivation taxes, and how that will be a very important discussion that we'll have this year to look at that, because I understand we did it for CPI adjustments, but and we're waiting on an ordinance. I know that too, but I think it's just important that we, and if we're going to do it again, and we're going to maintain our pliability towards cannabis, we need to be pliable towards other initiatives. When it comes to people building, we're not very pliable when it comes to that. People are telling me that they're bringing projects to the county. They'll pay, but then they're not able to finish. Well, we're not. If they're not able to finish, then there's no property taxes or any other revenue, sales revenue taxes or anything like that. So I just think if we're going to be pliable to cannabis, we need to be pliable to everything else.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
Well, I really want to thank admin and our team, all of our financial team members at the county. You really, you gave us the reality check and then helped us come up with a plan to course correct. And we have always been very conservative budgeting. Many counties around the state and around the country are dealing with major deficits this year. And we have a bit of a soft landing, and we have time to correct, and we have time to make changes. So I really want to express a lot of gratitude for helping us prepare. I'm looking at you, Stephen, so you better look up. Really appreciate how conservative you all are in keeping us in this position. We do have to make changes, and we're going to have to really commit to them. This is something that we have known is coming. Everything is cyclical. There were some years when we had a lot of revenue coming in, but we also had a course correct for all the deferments that were made in the decade at least before. Salaries were deferred. And I want to talk about that because I keep hearing it. We don't have services and we don't take care of infrastructure without the people that serve this county. And if we can't pay the people a decent wage, a competitive wage, then we lose them like we did before. And I have been sitting through these budget hearings long before I was on this board. And I remember those days when every single department head came up and said, we can't hire people. We have to give raises. Morale was so low. We were hemorrhaging people. We were hemorrhaging law enforcement. And so during the years when we had resources, we made those investments, and we have given significant raises over the years. And now we're in a place right now where we have a stable workforce. We did hear from the sheriff. You know, he is looking to be fully hired, but we had to reduce some positions to get there. So the other thing that we've done over the years is we've done our capital improvement plan so that we can start applying for grants to care for our infrastructure. We can't go back to the days of deferral. We have to keep prioritizing the staff that runs our county, and we have to commit to maintaining the infrastructure that we have. And I also want to call out our treasurer tax collector's office has increased revenue significantly over the years, and we would not be in this position right now had those steps not been taken with our investment portfolio and going after TOT taxes and helping with cannabis collection. There has been an incredible amount of work from our financial offices, both the assessor's office too, which is why we're seeing more property tax revenue coming in, because they have reduced the backlog and are now working on assessments. He said it only takes 6 months now. So these are the things that we've been working really hard on for the past several years to get us back into a better place financially. Things were very, very tough, and a lot of people that are watching these meetings now didn't watch the meetings back then. So you may not have that perspective. So here we are. We've been planning for this. We're course correcting. We're tightening our belt. It's going to be tough. But I do want to say that a lot of good has happened in the last couple of years, and we have socked away a lot of reserves that we never had. So I really, really can't thank you all enough for helping us guide us to this point and to get us through these next years, which we know. We knew they were coming, and we know it's going to be hard. So thank you.
Anything further at this point? Or? So where are we going? Yes. 5 minutes? We'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to call our meeting back to order, and at this point, we're going to move to our 5.1, consideration of behavioral health fiscal stabilization and reform readiness workshop from Behavioral Health Services, and I'll turn it over to Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to introduce the other folks who have joined me here at the dais. We have Stacy Bethel, who is the chair of our Behavioral Health Advisory Board, and then we have Miss Amber Luch, who is our fiscal program manager, and we do have a couple of staff online just in case there are questions that we are not able to get through, and I will try to make this as quick as possible, and not boring, I hope.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. So the theme of this is we did a really good job expanding services in a very tumultuous time. And we have been covering, obviously there was a $4 million loan, and hopefully we can walk through the history of that and also some proposed options for your board's consideration. So I showed pieces of this slide yesterday, but again, I want to highlight the service unit growth starting in 22-23. Cal-AIM service expansion went live July 1st, 2023, and so you do see dramatic increases resultant of that. So that means expanded eligibility criteria for youth, expanded provision of services, and expansion of services in general under a fee-for-service model. A 57% increase in our budget between fiscal years 22-23 to present. And we also had a 188% increase in contractor payments. As I stated yesterday, those were largely driven by out-of-county acute hospitalizations, state hospital, and other out-of-county placements. And we also saw an increase, which makes sense, in our local match. And I will unpack the local match dynamics in a different slide. I will reiterate that as of June 3rd, we've already recorded 109 service units. So that's actually stabilizing, and it looks like we'll pretty much be on trend for last fiscal year's service units delivery. So what we are seeing is that we're beginning to stabilize the penetration into the community and the service units, and I don't anticipate that that's going to continue to grow at the rate that it has based on current trends. Just want to note that we expanded these services during payment reform, a transition to a new electronic health record, and of course a transition to a model where we must front the share of cost for services rendered, and we're impacted by state offsets and also the timeliness of the state in returning claims and payments back to us.
Can I ask you to define service units?
Yeah, so that would be any type of billable service in a unit. Typically, units are 15-minute increments. Okay, here is some of the measures of our success, and I know Vice Chair Pyska had asked about this, but we successfully implemented Cal-AIM. We implemented a full mobile crisis benefit. We moved into the launch of our drug Medi-Cal organized delivery system, and as your board had been made aware, we received our first audit of the DMC ODS system by the Department of Healthcare Services, and we received 0 audit findings. We expanded school-based access to specialty mental health services, dramatically expanded our work around justice-involved services, including the CARE Act, diversion, jail reentry, and we did a lot of strengthening of community partnerships, recognizing that our contracted provider network is critical to the expansion and provision of services. These are just some of our other accomplishments. We've increasingly raised the profile of Lake County as a leader in statewide reform in terms of service delivery, and we also have secured major competitive state investments such as the Bond B-CHIP grant award, and a prior $2.4 million school-based services award. I'd like to note that our department does not have a grant writer. I write all of our grants. Okay, your board has previously been made aware of the payment mechanics under payment reform, but I will give a brief review because it is complicated and easy to forget. So the basic math here is you expand services, you have more claim service units, and then you need to have more money to pay for those services because there's more of them. I explained yesterday that our reimbursement is dependent on each individual beneficiary's aid code. We did an analysis, and the majority of our clients are at a 50-50 split, again, going back to that $100 math. But if we had a $100 service unit and that person has a 50-50 split, that means the county must pay for $50 of that service unit, and we must pay for that before we get the 50 back to reimburse. Now, there are some more favorable aid codes to the county, such as a 90-10 split, where the state pays for 90% of that, and the county would have a share of cost of 10%, so $10 on $100. So that's just some of the mechanics on CalAIM payment reform.
Can I ask, will you be going over where that local match comes from later in your presentation, or should I ask right now?
Yes, Mr. Sapati, I will.
Okay.
So more access to services, as I've just shown, more money, therefore, to pay for more services makes more cash exposure. So we must put up more money because we have more services to pay for those services. The previous state of affairs in behavioral health finance was a model of certified public expenditures where we reconciled with the state and trued up and went through a cost report. We're still actually awaiting processing of cost reports from prior years from the Department of Healthcare Services. They're markedly behind. We are up to date on all of our submissions, but I think the most recent cost report that they settled was 17-18. And I'll get into how that all plays out in terms of financial dynamics. Okay, as I stated before, oh no, I didn't state this. So in anticipation of payment reform and recognizing that counties were going to have to put an upfront share of cost, the state said, okay, well, we'll preload some money into your IGT accounts and we'll determine what we think you might need on a month-to-month basis based on utilization data from COVID. Which is really fascinating because COVID notably impacted, people dropped out of services. I mean, we saw a marked decrease just by the nature of what it was. And so for whatever reason, they chose to pull data of service utilization from very anomalous period. They estimated that our monthly share of cost to purchase services would be about $250,000 a month. The reality is that we're running at about $1 million a month to pay for services because of the service expansion, as well as it was, again, not a great time to pull data in terms of service utilization. So that's about a quarter of 1 month. And you all will remember that when we implemented the new electronic health record, we had a delay in claims reimbursement of over 8 months. And so we had to continuously provide services, pay our bills, and then pay our IGT when it came due and they were ready to process claims. So just another timeline refresher here. We were a pilot county in the semi-statewide electronic health record platform through California Mental Health Services Authority. We did that in March of 2023. Payment reform went live in July of 2023. The system, unfortunately, was not appropriately calibrated to make that change. I will be honest, in hindsight, I would never be a pilot county again, but we can't go back, so that's what I have learned. And of course, your board is aware that about a year later, in March 2024, we had to move forward to request $4 million in bridge loans to keep our operations afloat, given how much we spent all our reserves, essentially paying for services during what was a billing drought, in addition to the requirement to put up money also to pay for services. In March of 2025, we repaid $2 million of that loan. We made DSS whole and we paid back $1 million to the general fund. The general fund had $3 million of that $4 million balance. We were on track for stabilization, and I can show you, we'll get into those trends later, but we received a lot of technical assistance from the state of California, from Boston Consulting Group, which was contracted with them, as well as from the California Mental Health Services Authority to help us navigate this and figure out better ways to track and manage our revenue. However, we were subject to several different state offsets and intercepts, which means that before you get your money, they take it off the top. They take their money that they're owed to you, and I'll get into what that looked like and why they did it. Your board may recall that I actually sent a letter of protest to one of the major offsets that they were proposing related to claims that they mistakenly billed to the federal government, which were ineligible and should have stayed in California. The feds then came back to the state and said, hey, we can't pay those, give us our money back. And the state said, oh, okay, counties, you're going to make us whole for that. And it's also important to note that some of those claims were over 10 years old. The statute of limitations with regard to recouping monies is about 3 years. So that's happening. Okay, this is a picture of our realignment and offsets. And this is part of the story of where the match comes from. So just as a background, counties must use non-federal dollars in order to match federal dollars. So Medi-Cal is it's the federal Medicaid, and you cannot use federal money to pay for federal money. So you have to use what's called local dollars. So for us, that's our 1991 and 2011 realignment, and that's our Mental Health Services Act dollars that have been used for purchase of services. So this is a graph to show the offsets that have been enacted with regard to state hospital and managed care, which means that our state hospital placements they'll typically take it out of our realignment. So instead, like before we get that realignment check, whatever they've determined that we owe to the state hospital, they take it out of that, and then we get whatever's left. And state hospitals have notoriously held people for a long time, and we've had very little authority or way to leverage to say, hey, can you step people down? I'm happy to note that that has changed. The state hospitals were recently subject to a lot more oversight, and we have been seeing them like releasing people with much shorter treatment times, which is very encouraging. But just to run it back, beginning in 20 and 21, our realignment allocation was $2.23 million. We had about $890,000 of offsets, and so we only received 60%, and you can see that amount goes down significantly in 22, 23. We only received 35% of our realignment dollars, and then in fiscal year 24, 25, we received less than 20%. We only received 19% of our realignment due to these state hospital offsets.
Is that based on the number of individuals that we have placed in the state hospitals?
We do, correct, but however, we do not place individuals in the state hospitals. That's a process that's determined outside of our control. Sometimes individuals are placed in the state hospital because they're incompetent to stand trial, which is not a determination that the county makes. The court contracts with an individual named an alias that makes a determination. However, we're responsible for securing and paying for that placement. Obviously, one of the solutions here is to not let people get that sick, which we're working on by expanding services. And you can see that did it's trending better. Now, so far we have received 35% of our realignment, but as you can see, that's a dramatic reduction in realignment monies, which dramatically reduced our ability to have a local share of cost and local monies. So there's this also, we are still doing cost report settlements. As I mentioned, we're completely up to date with our submissions, but the state is still back in 17-18. So overall, the cost reports have been favorable to us. Between 17-18 and projected for 18-19, they've said we owe you about $2 million, a little over $2 million, based on the old certified public expenditure methodology. However, for these uninsured, these non-citizen claims that they took back from us, that was $875,000. So basically, we're anticipating only netting about $344,000 after they offset all of the state hospital costs and the UIS settlements. And again, the claims that they're going back to and recouping from the county are over 3 years old. So they are, again, the statute is 3 years. It's unclear to me. I've been lifting it in California Behavioral Health Directors Association. It's not unique to Lake County. It's a very difficult environment with the state at this point, and I continue to advocate.
Question?
So what does advocacy look like? And are you getting anywhere? Is the AG involved? Like what? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel or hope?
What does advocacy look like? Well, for initially, when I was notified of this clawback, I went to your board and I asked to submit a letter to the director of the Department of Healthcare Services. They sent me a letter saying, we don't agree with you. We're not going to go along with that. I have been working with CBHDA. They have their own attorneys that are, I mean, there's a variety of battles on the behavioral health front. It's definitely something that's on their radar. But I suppose connecting perhaps with the Attorney General might be a path forward. I can run that by CBHDA. It's, again, been a difficult environment to navigate.
Well, I remember your letter. I just want you to know that we'll do whatever it takes.
I appreciate that. Okay, so despite that, we implemented a lot of different reform and upskills, they call it upskilling of how we track, manage money. That was a body of work that was done with us in coordination with the Boston Consulting Group. And I'm pleased to see that it is trending in the direction that we predicted given our implementation of managing our cash flow and our expenses. So at present, if we were to be paid out everything right now in claims and then get that revenue and then minus our expenses, which is not our state, we aren't trued up yet, and that won't happen until the end of the fiscal year, we would have a positive, a balance of about 3.6 million. So that is a positive trend from the deficit that we were facing that precipitated the need of a loan from the general fund. Presently, we have available operating cash, and this changes. We monitor it on real time on a day-to-day basis, and I would confidently say it's sitting at about 3 million, over 3 million right now, and that includes reserve for payroll. We always have a set aside of reserve for payroll for at least 1 month, as well as holdbacks for the $600,000 that we have for the Bond B-Chip grant. That's our match. We currently owe, and this has probably increased, close to $7 million in contractor payments. Primarily, those are hospitals. Those are acute psychiatric hospitalizations. So if you don't know, that's when somebody goes, they are certified 5150. They're unsafe to themselves, the community, or at grave disability, and we are obligated to find placement for them. We don't have any acute psych or other acute or semi-acute placements in Lake County, although we try really hard to find the least expensive option. So our contractor payment lag, unfortunately, is between 4 to 6 months, depending on which contract it is. Hospitals are the furthest behind. But also fee-for-service payments, because we have to pay for the service first, wait for reimbursement from the state, and then pay our contractors. That imposes a significant delay. My goal and my hope has been to shore that up to no less than 3 months to give time for that whole payment process to flow through. Of course, we have the existing general fund loan balance of $2 million. Presently, our IGT account, which is an account the state holds for our local share of cost, is not where the state would like it to be in order to push claims through. As I stated, they'd want to see us have $1 million in there a month, just kind of held in perpetuity to match funds. Last I checked, it was nearly 400,000, which isn't zero, but it isn't enough to push all of our claims through all the time. DHCS sends us notifications that they'd like us to deposit more money. We are aware of that. We continuously evaluate our ability to use our local funding to and balance that with contracted provider payments and sustainability of operations. But so far for 25-26, we're looking at closing in on close to $11 million in local share of cost for services for this fiscal year. So again, we're trending in a positive direction as opposed to the deficit that precipitated the loan. Unfortunately, though, some of these offsets hurt us at a really not ideal time. Had that not happened, we'd probably be in a better cash position, and the state hospital placements are, the situation is improving, but that was really difficult when we were only receiving 20% of our realignment dollars for 2 years in a row.
Can you go through the billing process and the timelines for the billing process? Because I'm guessing it's still the same as a typical TAR where it's every 30 days you would submit what services were done.
Not quite. Yes, I can. So let's take the example of fee-for-service payments, and let's just take the example of like psychiatry services or any other kind of outpatient fee-for-service. So we did a massive restructuring of our contracts mid-year, which was difficult. Our prior model had been in alignment with certified public expenditures. We would get the invoice from our contractor for all of the services, and we would pay it, and then we would wait to be reimbursed. And that's just how business was done across counties. That wasn't unusual to Lake. However, we have since structured our contracts so that we get the invoice of claims. Of course, we go through all those billing claims. Those are sent up to the state. We pay for those services with our local funding, and then we get the money back, and then we pay our contractor.
But what's the timeline on once you receive the billing services? Because I believe the contracts say every 30 days they're supposed to submit their invoices for what services they've done. So that's 30 days.
Yes.
Then afterwards, for you to get the billing to the state, what's the timeline?
I can take that. So our providers are typically required or asked to provide the billing within 15 days of the close of the month. We bill every week for services that are ready to be billed up to the state. The state typically takes about 30 days to issue payment. There can be further delays if there's not enough IGT in the account. Typically, once the claims have been adjudicated at the state level and there is IGT in the account, the transaction will take 2 weeks from the time that it's released and those CFA dollars are drawn down to them to issuing a check. So in a perfect system where the billing is in there, it's correct, it's been billed to the state, there's IGT funds, it should be about 30 to 45 days from the time that it's billed that we're seeing those dollars coming back in. And as soon as those dollars come back in, we break down the check, we issue the payment either that week or the following week.
I'd say 45 days would be great if that was the case. 60 to 90 would be probably what I would suspect is the normal standard, because they're not all clean. Mistakes happen. You have to, I'm used to Medi-Cal just saying no the first time and you have to try again anyways. But is the 4 to 6 months solely the IGT issue, that there's no matching funds available and so it takes that long? Or what's the process once you do get reimbursed to get it to the contractor?
I think the delay is very much tied to the lack of local dollars for the IGT, because that puts a stop to the billing being processed. With mental health, they won't release the funds for it's considered a batch. So all of those claim lines in that batch have to have the required amount of IGT to be released. So if we have a $100,000 batch, but we only have $90,000 in IGT, they will not release portions of that batch. It's the entire billing batch. So the IGT delays are definitely causing invoices to stack up and be delayed. But as soon as we get the payment from the state, it's issued to the contractor within a week.
Okay, and then just a naive, ignorant question. If you have available 3.45, is there a reason that some of that doesn't get thrown into the deposit that is being recommended from you, because it covers payroll, it covers other things that you're unable at that moment in time to be able to help fill that need to continue the processing?
That's part of it, and part of it is also that it's restricted because it's federal funding. So it can't be sent back up as part of the CFA. We have certain revenue sources that can be used, but those are limited.
So that the available operating cash, as she stated, has some restricted funding mixed in, right? That's from all sources. And so the portion of that that's local fund and eligible for IGT, that's what we have to play with essentially. And we have to do a weekly analysis of what can we send up in IGT without cutting ourselves off at our knees and winding up back in the same situation that we were, where we're not able to afford our bills. So it's something that we review on a weekly basis.
And so, sorry to keep asking, but the IGT, the only way that we're filling that in is due to the realignment funds that you are receiving, or there are other dollars there? Because it seems like there's a limited amount, and I mean, I love that we're adding more and more services, but at what point do we add so many services that it has to come from another location that isn't realignment, that isn't related specifically to behavioral health, and eventually goes to general fund?
That's a great question. So one of the other things that we do is certain portions of the patient revenue, so that's what it's called when it's paid, claims are paid. It's called patient revenue. Certain portions of that are eligible to be used as the local match. And so we also break that down when we get payments, and we determine what portion of that is safe, is non-federal dollars that we can use towards that, but it is limited. And again, because we were behind 8 months in generating any revenue, we're still very incrementally and methodically working through that. Obviously, stabilization of the scale of services is something that we're seeing and focused on. However, I will foreshadow, and next week I come before your board for the BHSA plan final hearing. We are structuring our Behavioral Health Services Act dollars to the extent that it's allowed. All available Behavioral Health Services Act dollars must be used towards essentially the purchase of services within their evidence-based practices, which is an allowable use, and a lot of counties are transitioning to that, which is why you have seen the closure of programs that were non-Medi-Cal reimbursable. So we are focusing, our plan is to focus our BHSA dollars on maximizing those for the local share of cost. Okay. So this is a fun little graph. It's showing the relationship between claims service units, our adjusted budget, and our actual expenditures, and this matches the math we previously saw. I do want to put a note that these numbers are indexed, otherwise they wouldn't have a basis for comparison, but so it's to show the relative proportion and position. So service units were well above expenditures in our adjusted budget, which is good news, but it basically just shows another way of showing the numbers that I showed on the first slide. So we have a lot of service units. We saw our adjusted budget go up, and we are beginning to see it kind of level out and stabilize in response to implementing CalAIM service expansion. So the other piece of this equation is that we have an obligation and a requirement to provide a certain level of service, and if we fail to do that, there will be other consequences up to and including monetary sanctions. And so, for example, the federal government has what's called network adequacy, which the Department of Healthcare Services interprets, and that regards how many full-time equivalent medication prescribers we must have, how many full-time equivalent therapists we must have, and they're very rigid about that. And so regardless, there is a bare minimum that we have to meet that is outside of our local control. We do see that demands for service continue to outpace capacity, which is something we're continuously monitoring. But the BHSA will also force counties to more narrowly focus on those with the most severe issues and less about general mental health wellness and things like that. So this is a graph, a table showing our, and I can't, this is bothering me, hold on one second. Okay, showing the revenue that we've received, our expenditures, and the difference between those. Overall, we are in the black. However, you can see that there's a lot of monthly variance. So in July of 2025, we were $590,000 revenues ahead of expenditures. And then the next month, we were $770,000 revenue below expenditures, and that trended for a couple of months. And then we saw November 2025 and December 2025, we had some positive trending where revenues were above expenditures. But it's hard to manage the volatility of this cash flow without a large basis of reserve, which we depleted during CalAIM payment reform and the transition to our electronic health record. Okay, and I just do want to highlight that overall, when we clear out claims and we true up at the end of the year, we are not negative in terms of the amount of money that we have. It's just that the fund timing is difficult. We won't get all of our claims trued up and paid out probably until September, and that's being optimistic. And so you can't adequately reconcile your budget until after that budget year has closed. Receivables is also not the same thing as cash, right? So you may have claims sitting there, you may have payments that are due to you, but until that touches down, it's not cash. And then don't forget, we also have to put up the IGT for the share of cost. This is also further impacted by state offsets, which I've just covered. And again, that timing and that month-to-month volatility of some months you're doing well, some months you're not, and without a cushion, it's difficult. So we've been doing our best to manage that extreme volatility. Again, that's just not a Lake County specific issue. That's something that you're going to hear from all 58 counties in California, behavioral health. So this is a graph showing, again, a different way of showing the cash flow timing issue. So the blue line is fiscal year 23-24, and it's showing the difference between revenue and expenditures. So the blue line, the difference, that was the year that precipitated the loan. We did end negative at 2.36 million, and that was, is that correct, Amber? That was the difference between revenue and expenditures. The following year, 24-25, also didn't trend very well. However, that's only going through June. So as we moved through the rest of the year into the next fiscal year, again, that month-to-month cash flow, we would be able to true up. Now we're finally stabilizing, I would say. So we're in a much more positive position to close out this fiscal year. I know that that green line only shows through March of this year. But it's important to note that spending did increase, but also many costs are fixed and we don't have much of a choice. So for 2023, the annual net was nearly even. So we were negative at about $240,000. The gap widened again, that precipitated the loan from the general fund. And year to date net, we are positive $1,570,000. That's just through March, but it's still trending positive at this point. If we were to pull data, I would say it's more positive than that. Just to reiterate, payment form reform is complex. It's something that all counties are grappling with. Small counties, understandably, have smaller reserves. We're not LA County. We don't have a huge body of reserves to pull down on. And then we did request assistance. I reached out to the Department of Healthcare Services earlier this year, to their Department of Finance, and also to the director of DHCS to ask about a possible remedy for our IGT account. My proposal was to essentially ask to borrow money from other counties that had better, like they had more money in their IGT accounts, and to use that in our IGT account in a method that they would get their money back as soon as claims were paid. So I did everything that I could to reach out to try to remedy this at a state level. They were ultimately not responsive. So just a summary of the corrective actions that we've implemented. Immediate disclosure as soon as issues were identified. I reached out and rung the alarm bell with DHCS. We got this amazing consultant support for free from Boston Consulting Group, which is nice, and I have to give DHCS credit for allowing us to utilize them as extensively as we did. We also have ongoing technical assistance free of charge from the California Mental Health Services Authority. We meet weekly with their financial analysts to work on a variety of different things, all aimed at stabilizing and increasing cash flow. And I continue to escalate these issues along with many other California counties in the Behavioral Health Directors Association. As I stated before, we renegotiated our contracts, notably our short-term residential therapeutic placement contracts, aka group homes, that's what they used to be called. Those do have a small fee-for-service component to them, and we were able to renegotiate those down to 45% of our fee-for-service rate. So even in a worst-case scenario where we have a 50-50 split, we still have a 5% margin that's coming back to us. We renegotiated our primary psychiatry contract from 65% down to 58%. And another major contract we were able to negotiate down to 55% pass-through, which, again, negotiating contracts mid-year, midstream was challenging, but ultimately the effort proved successful and helped stabilize our cash flow. As I stated before, we've changed our cash governance where we only pay contractors after those claims have been adjudicated and paid for us, and we apply those to the contractor invoices. So that's finally transitioned away from the certified public expenditure methodology. We also issued a robust RFP process for virtually all of our services. We're hopefully finalizing an award for all prescribing psychiatry services. We received 14 different proposals for psychiatry services and narrowed it down to now 2 finalists. One of the number one things that is impacting selection, of course not the only thing, is their rate, right? And making sure that we cannot have any contracts that are not strictly fee for service, which means that we won't pay you for anything other than services delivered, which again was a really hard lesson for a lot of counties. So we plan to do that for all of our services, going out to bid and making sure that we bring the highest value for the lowest cost to our county. As I stated, we have much improved tracking, modeling technology, if you will, consultant support. We've upskilled significantly with regard to our ability to track cash flow and revenue and expenditures and as close to real time as possible. So those are all positive and have contributed to the trend where this closing out this fiscal year is a much better position than we have been in the past 2 fiscal years. Continuing cash visibility, where we can have a rolling cash forecast so we can project our revenue and expenditures, our IGT requirements. That is happening right now. As I stated, that contract discipline and making sure we're a strict fee-for-service payment methodology. Optimizing claiming is always something that we're striving for, cleaning those claims, making sure we have a low claims error rate, reducing the lag. As Amber stated, we bill on a weekly basis. Before payment reform, we were billing on a monthly basis. So that change is actually made for a while. We are prioritizing the mandated services. Obviously, we are trying to just meet our minimum mandates at this point, so nothing extra. And well, for better or for worse, the states raised the bar significantly on what minimum is, so increasing requirements and obligations, and I would argue a lot of unfunded mandates have come down to California counties that we've been forced to absorb. And like I said, continued state advocacy. So one of the biggest pieces of state advocacy I have engaged in is preservation of the mobile crisis benefit. When that rolled out, it was a mandatory benefit, and the state covered the local share of match, which is really important because our service encounter, our unit for mobile crisis, is about $6,000 an encounter. And so if we were to have to put up that money, it would be well over $1 million a year. So it's still not certain what is happening with that budget, but we know that it to be made an optional benefit, contingent on the county's ability to meet that local share of cost. We would not be able to afford mobile crisis. Stabilization, I would encourage the board to consider prioritizing timely access to services, preservation of community trust, showing that we can continue to provide services, obviously county credibility, and least but not last, workforce stability. Notably, the raises that were incurred from the class and comp also occurred at a time that dramatically drove up our payroll costs. So we had all of these competing financial demands happening.
I have a question for you. On the last slide, you said prioritization of services. Based on what we're discussing, are any services no longer not allowed, but offered that used to be offered?
Yes, the peer-run wellness centers.
Other than that, and that was more of a Prop 1 change than a CalAIM or a funding issue outside of a Prop 1 change. I'm just wondering if we've changed any other service that has been allowed.
Essentially, no. However, it's hard to disentangle Prop 1 from required services in some ways. So that does feed into it. So any optional non-Medi-Cal reimbursable services are not something that we're going to be able to do. And really scaling down to, again, the bare minimum of the prescribing FTEs. Prescribers are our most expensive outpatient cost. So essentially, one program, we had like a dedicated CalWorks program that worked in coordination with CalWorks, and we did have an MOU with them where they supported share of cost, but we're transitioning that to, again, if you come in and meet eligibility criteria, we'll put you in the service bucket that you're eligible for and not a special designation just because you're in CalWorks. So that is one example of that. But we've already, I mean, it's any more, there isn't any optional services that we have that we could cut without, again, being subject to potential sanctions. Okay, so we still have this $2 million. Obviously, that was framed as a short-term loan, and it has turned out not to be short-term. I want to be very transparent and accountable to that. You're not asking for any new loans or extraordinary requests, and don't ever want to do that again. I hope I've demonstrated that our fiscal forecast is trending in a positive direction relative to the past 2 years. And ultimately, we are focused on maintaining service stability to meet the minimum requirements set forth by the Department of Healthcare Services. Behavioral health transformation has, again, imposed significant requirements on counties that are going to be difficult to meet. So here are 2 options, and of course, your board may consider any number of options, but your board may choose to, in part or full, forgive the $2 million as part of an investment in the behavioral health infrastructure during a period of generational transformation and service expansion, or potentially approve an affordable payment plan. And here is some thoughts about what a sustainable payment plan could look like. We don't want to have such an aggressive payment plan that it would ultimately set us back and put us in another fiscal crisis where we're unable to continue drawing down Medicaid reimbursable services. But again, we are not and have no desire to request any additional general fund support.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
You still have more slides?
I do. I mean, this is just kind of a reiteration of understanding that we've been through the most intense period of behavioral health transformation that, again, once in a generation.
And, okay. Am I okay?
You can go ahead, but
Okay,
we're
thanks.
close. We've got a couple more.
Yeah, I just want to thank, like, you have been through a lot. Your department has been through a lot. And I appreciate so much how responsive you've been and agile and accessing all of the resources that are available to you and being very assertive when you need more. So I just pause for that. 'Cause it's been a huge transformation.
Thank you. I'm not too proud to beg.
It shows. Thank you.
So we want to stabilize. That's the ultimate goal. We serve the community, and I would argue that we serve them well and in ways that we never have before. We dramatically increased our provision of services to a very needy community, and it was way past due. And it's been good to be able to meet the community's needs better during this period of time. So with that, that is the end of my presentation.
All right, questions
So
or comments?
I think making a decision to forgive the loan today is not prudent,
Mhm.
but also understanding your cash flow situation. I don't want, I want you to get back on your feet before we can expect a payment plan or something. So I'm willing to let this go another year. You're trending in the right direction. You've done all of the right things. And then with a commitment to come back and look and make decisions when you're in a more stable place. The last thing we want to do is set you back again.
Supervisor Sabatier.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation. There's a couple of things that I didn't see that I'd like to ask some questions. I know we were hoping to get a report, and we hopefully will be getting one. I don't know if there's anything happening at all. I could be wrong on the number, lots of bills, but I think it was SB 43 or 53 for the conservation.
43.
43. I had it right. Thank you. It's the conservation of those who are unsheltered and also showing signs of substance use disorder or something along the lines, or maybe it didn't have to be one or the other, but it filled that kind of criteria. Have we utilized SB 43, or have we steered clear from it and not conserved anybody under that law?
So it expanded 5150 authority to include individuals with substance use challenges who were a danger to themselves, others. Historically, 5150, and it has a very storied history, as you may imagine, was really narrowly designed in response to the fact that we kind of kept people and warehoused them in state hospitals for a long time. So in terms of the specific numbers of people who've been placed on a hold under SB 43, I don't have that data available, but I am certainly happy to bring that back. We tried to avoid 5150 for all types of reasons, and my goal through mobile crisis and through other services.
Okay.
I guess we will get the rest of the answer after a break.
Yes, we have lost internet and Live Manager. We need about 10 minutes to
Okay.
reboot.
We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. Live, Sam? I'm going to call our meeting back to order, and I'm not sure who was next. Was I at you, or?
I was in the midst of receiving an answer that I believe in the break time, more answers were provided to respond to the SB 43 question that I had.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. We had 3 individuals so far who met criteria under SB 43 expanded criteria. Unfortunately, we were not able to conserve those individuals because conservatorships have to originate with the treating physician at the hospital, and the hospitals have been unwilling to participate in that process. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay. 'Cause the question is there because that's on top of all the other costs that we've talked about. We know that's not necessarily a number that we can estimate on a year-to-year basis. It really depends on the individuals that you meet out there, mostly probably through your mobile crisis or things like that. And so I just wanted to have the conversation to also get an idea of how it's been working, because I think it's as of January of this year that it was forced on us to follow SB 43.
Yes, we deferred until we were required.
Yeah, and so I'll go to the loan. I would say absolutely not. It can't be forgiven, because if we do that, then I think we set a precedent for potential future. I do want to have a monthly statement. I would prefer they start as of July 1st and maybe have an incremental increase. But I also think, and I said it before, I'll say it again, there needs to be also an interest rate, because there's money owed to the general fund that right now the general fund is not accumulating money because of the inability to put it in our investment. And so I believe we were looking at $80,000 a year that would be lost because of that. And so I think that's how you keep the general fund whole, not giving zero interest loans with no ramifications whatsoever. So that's what I would be interested in. I do have a question, since we talked about billing and we talked about revenues. All billing, and in my experience of billing, there are some losses. And so I know you and I have exchanged some emails where there were some bills that were not reimbursed, but you still had to pay the contractor without the reimbursement received, and it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, if I remember correctly. Where does those funds come from, and what is an acceptable amount of non-reimbursed billing? Because I know when I worked at the hospital, there was a certain percentage that we would agree could be forgiven, but we would have to work really hard on doing that. I believe you have 700 days to get the bills processed and paid, or at least submitted. It might take a little longer if there's intricacies that you're working out with to get it paid. But what is an acceptable amount, and where does that money come from that you eventually pay the providers with for bills that have not been reimbursed and can no longer be reimbursed by the state and the feds?
We strive for a claims error rate, and that means claims denied of 2% or less. Unfortunately, we have not been in that target range. I'm not prepared right now to present a comprehensive overview. However, I would recommend the board ask staff to come back at a date certain to provide a presentation on claims reimbursement and adjudication and how many were ultimately denied. What was the second part of your question, Mr. Supervisor?
Where does the money come from?
It's
I forgot.
for our local revenue. So it would be either our realignment, our MHSA, or potentially patient revenue from claims offsetting that.
So I think that what you had suggested was a monthly data sheet to track how things are going, I would suggest that needs to be in there so that we understand what services we're asking contractors to do that we're not getting the reimbursement, but we're still having to pay out. Because seeing that percentage get closer and closer to the 2% goal, if that's the goal that remains, I think is an important part for us to follow, or else we're not understanding how money is leaving without getting any kind of compensation in return. And the numbers that I've seen has concerned me, and I want to make sure that we pay attention to that, because that's not, I don't think it's appropriate that things are difficult and there's loss. I don't know that we're and you just admitted as well, we're not in the appropriate levels at this moment in time. And so knowing that information is really useful to better understand our status financially.
I also wanted to highlight that going into our 26-27 contracts for all of our fee-for-service providers that are billable, we will only reimburse them for what we've been paid, and at the end of that year, or quarterly if we have the capacity, we'll be doing a reconciliation of claims that were ultimately denied that may have been paid to them. So with the process, essentially, we should not have any denied claims paid to them because we weren't paid for it.
Yes.
That has not been the operating process for this fiscal year.
Have we had a conversation with our attorneys about that, on whether that's on us if we're not doing the billing correctly versus if it's on them? I'm concerned about.
That's a standard contract provision across fee-for-service payment methodologies, and actually the nexus of that payment contract came from the Cal-AIM payment reform contract templates, so that guidance has came directly from the state.
Okay. Still a little concerning, but thank you.
Anything else, Supervisor Sabatier?
I guess today or next week is a decision, because I believe June 30th is the end of the extension that was last there. And so is next week the plan to bring the extension?
That would be at the direction of your board, I believe, but we are prepared to bring that back next week. Is that?
And you won't be here.
No, I will not be here.
We do.
23rd, yes, not the
23rd.
30th. After 3 days in a row, it's
Right. Go to Supervisor Owen.
I know, I remember as the contracts, and I spoke to you just for a second about it, but I wanted to bring it public. The state has given, as I understand it, medical cards to undocumented workers, and that's the portion of the clawback that the federal refused to pay, and the state dumped it on us. Do we have any resolutions for that?
Short answer, no. And just to add some more context and clarity, the state of California, obviously, they determine their own, Medi-Cal is its own program, and so the state has determined that they do have wanted to provide Medi-Cal to individuals with they call unsatisfactory immigration status. So it's important to note that when we get that client in front of us and we run their Medi-Cal, it does not tell us that they are coded in an unsatisfactory immigration status. It just shows active or not. And so we don't have control, even if we were to exercise it, to determine that those claims were ineligible for federal reimbursement. It's also possible, due to the changes with H.R. 1 and the federal government, that they could go back and demand other things of the state. And what the state has been consistently doing is offloading costs onto counties, not just in behavioral health, but across a variety of different domains.
Anything else?
No, I just don't know. So that can affect the county financially, having to absorb those costs.
With no visibility, correct.
Thank you.
Just two last things I had forgotten about. We had talked about rent stabilization at one point, and at the CSAC conference that you were one of the guest speakers for a panel. You had mentioned that you were holding that at this moment in time and not moving forward. I know that that was new information for me. Just wondering if you might be able to relate some of that to the board, since we approved moving forward with the rental stabilization, and obviously something came up.
So I think what you are referencing is the transitional rent benefit, which is a managed care plan benefit whereby Partnership Health Plan, who is our managed care plan provider, has a contract with DHCS for the provision of rental subsidies for up to 6 months. We did sign the MOU, and that was also after a process of tribal consultation, which had been directed by the board. There weren't any significant updates about that, but the reason that I held back is because I was unclear about the payment mechanics and the extent to which we would have to front money and wait for reimbursement. That said, we are continuing to have meetings and working towards implementation of transitional rent, because in our new BHSA reality, you must expend all other payment sources for rental or housing subsidies before you may use the housing portion of BHSA.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure the board were apprised of the same information that I had received, and if there's ways to get that information sooner, since we approved it, it would be really useful to understand. My last one is the opioid settlement funds. I know in some of the emails that you and I had back and forth, I'm going to ask a question rather than making a statement. I believe that there was some opioid settlement funds that were used to pay a provider for non-reimbursed billing. Is that correct?
Not exactly. We had proposed the idea with the steering committee, which, to be clear, is not a voting or has no formal authority, and I welcome the board's thoughts about potential governance structures for the OSF. However, what that was is we absorbed a lot of costs, both in infrastructure and staffing, to stand up medication-assisted treatment services, as is required by our Drug Medi-Cal organized delivery plan. And we were allowed to, we moved forward with using opioid settlement funds to support those costs. And I must note that that is one of the high impact abatement areas of the opioid settlement funds, is to expand access and provision of MAT.
And so it wasn't for services that were not reimbursed by the state or the feds? That was
In part, it was. However, I am uncomfortable with the framing of we used opioid settlement funds to pay contractors. It was part of our overall costs, including infrastructure development for the MAT clinic, as well as services that were not able to draw down Medi-Cal.
And so if I'm correct, it was in the $500,000 range?
I am going to ask Miss Amber Westfall, who is a panelist, if she would be willing to come off mute, and perhaps she can speak to this. I do recommend that your board direct staff to bring back a thorough presentation of the opioid settlement funds. One of the two later meetings in July for a thorough overview of opioid settlement fund status and tracking. But Amber, are you available? Yes, she is. She's got her hand raised. Unmute.
Good afternoon. This is Amber Westfall, Programs Manager with Lake County Behavioral Health Services. Good afternoon, Chairman of the Board and Supervisors. To answer the question, the medicated assisted treatment services that Director Jones mentioned is a requirement of our DMC ODS system of care, is a service that is offered under our certified outpatient services. And we needed qualified staff in order to provide those medication services under our outpatient program. And in order to do that, we did not have qualified staff. So we did contract with community behavioral health to provide a prescriber and a registered nurse to provide those services under the umbrella of our certified program. Billing mechanisms to draw down Medi-Cal reimbursable services for those medication services were not available until February of 2026. And so we paid those qualified providers to offer those services in-house through other funding mechanisms initially. And I will defer to our fiscal manager on what those funding mechanisms were that we paid for those prescribers and the registered nurse. And then we went to the steering committee and asked that opioid settlement funds can be used as a reimbursement and backfill to cover the costs of those medication services.
Do you have any further information, Amber, or would that be no further?
So the reason I bring it up is, I think, yes, you beat me to it. I think I would love to have a new conversation sharing the anticipation, the vision of how the opioid settlement funds are to be used in the future. My concern is that $530,000 was used without approval from the board based on the fact that we already had a contract with one of these providers. And that's a large amount from the opioid settlement funds. And so I'm just concerned and think we need to be apprised as to how it's being spent. And I was under the impression that it would go to the board for every single time that we would spend that amount or any amount of our opioid settlement fund, since it's kind of a special settlement amount received by the county. So asking for better transparency and that conversation as well.
I appreciate that. If I may respond, I absolutely agree and am planning to bring back a full presentation regarding the opioid settlement funds. At present, there is no formal governance authority aside from the approved expenditure plan. These operate similar to any other restricted fund source, such as substance use disorder programs block grant, mental health disorder programs block grant, which are in the order of millions of dollars a year, for which we don't go before the board to approve every expense unless it was within the purchasing ordinance and we are awarding a contract that is required. But we have approached it as we would any other restricted funding source, and certainly welcome the opportunity with the board to explore a different governance pathway if that is desired.
Okay, I've got a couple things, but let me check. Is there any other board members that have anything? Then I'll go and then I'll open it to the public. Just comment on the loan. I wouldn't be in favor at this point of forgiving. I do agree with bringing that back for further discussion at a later time. I also agree with the opioid presentation coming back if the board has consensus. Well, first of all, I appreciate all the work your department's done. There's been a lot of changes. There's a lot of things going on, very, very complex, and a lot of things unknown with the state. And I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I am concerned with, the amount of time it takes to pay some of the contractors, and 4 to 6 months, and it seems like a long time because they also have to operate and they need funding to pay their people and all that. So don't know what the answer is. I just wanted to comment on that, and I'm hoping that can be sped up down the road. And I think that was it. So with that, I'll open it up to the public right now. If we have anybody in the room that wants to comment on this presentation.
Good morning, Board. Tom Lasek. Just a couple thoughts, suggestions. When it comes to paying back the loan, I think it does need to be paid back, but I would suggest maybe entertaining the idea of the cannabis reserve with this 30-30-30-10. Part of that is meant for, I mean, we already use it for health and safety already. And certainly behavioral health is critical to, it's a fundamental need. To entertain ideas to where perhaps that fund can be used to make the general fund whole, or to temporarily prop up the reserve that behavioral health needs in order to streamline their billing process and recovery process of invoices. I don't feel comfortable just letting it go, especially in this financial climate, but it is a basic need, and they do tremendous work. It's we're all, as I mentioned, it's in the hierarchy of needs. It's the basic safety and health, and we already support the Sheriff's Department through the Cannabis Reserve. We also support child support services and other things like that. So that might be something to sort of spread the pain out a little bit or lessen the pain, but not at the same time let people get off or a department get off without making the county whole and the taxpayers whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the room?
Miss Bethel, do you? Okay.
Go ahead.
Good morning. I guess it's still morning. Victoria Kelly. I'm the CEO for Redwood Community Services. We're a service provider here in Lake County, and we also serve a number of other counties, serving the lifespan. And we've been a provider in Lake County for about 30 years. And we've weathered challenges before with the department, and again this past couple years, facing our own challenges with payment reform. And so I understand, and I appreciate the department's diligence on working through many of these challenges, and we've done that hand in hand and hope to continue to do so. We also advocate, I know there was a lot of talk on advocacy. We also advocate on a state level regarding provider issues, but also state or county local issues to bring forward the impact that it has on providers. And I think lastly, I just want to say we're continued to be committed to this county. We're awaiting, response on our RFP and hope to continue to be a strong partner, even in the face of challenges that are coming down from state, feds, or local things that we have to navigate. We are committed and want to be able to serve our most vulnerable children, youth, and potentially adults in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room?
If I could take, if I could just take a quick moment. So I've been on the Behavioral Health Advisory Board prior to Elise taking the reins of behavioral health, and the exponential growth that I've seen under her leadership has been amazing. Just within our community, they're doing a great job over there. And also, this isn't the pains that behavioral health is experiencing are not just here in Lake County. I attend our state board meetings and across the state, unless you're like she said, LA County or somewhere that just has a lot of money, a lot of high tax base for funding. Our rural counties are all experiencing the same issues that our behavioral health is experiencing. So I just wanted to state that.
Thank you, Stacy. And was there anyone else in the room? Not seeing any, we'll go online. Is there anyone? Then I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. And it sounds like we need to do we need a motion on our just consensus on what we direct for asking staff to bring back? Okay. So I think we had consensus to bring back the opioid presentation. We also had consensus to bring back the item on the loan because that, I guess, was expiring. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question regarding the loan. In the budget that is prepared and submitted to us right now, is there an ability to pay back anything if billing statements start as of July? Is there anything implemented inside that budget?
There is not currently, but we can make a revision to do so. The thing is that it's balanced right now based off of contracted needs and operational needs and anticipated revenue. So there's not, the only way to really include that would be to increase our Medi-Cal revenue, but that's not based on data. That's just based on a need to include a repayment. I would ask for time to evaluate as we've stabilized out our billing and claiming, and be able to come back to the board with an actual, like, this is the available funding that we could anticipate paying back the loan incrementally. But that would take time to pull that data and be able to present that to the board.
Supervisor Owen?
Are we looking at some interest on that as well?
That'll be we'll have that conversation when it comes back to us, but I'm interested in that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we have direction then to bring that back. And was there anything else that I missed on this? No? Okay, then we'll go.
Make it for a time certain?
Yeah, so time certain?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so your board, as part of your direction, may want to give direction as to the date. It's not a public hearing, but you may want to consider, your board may want to consider when these two items should be brought back to your board.
Okay, and we had talked about next week for one of them, I believe.
I don't think you have a choice for the loan.
Right, the loan.
Expires.
Right. I don't know if the opioid would be ready for next week, but, or if we could even fit it. Do you have a suggestion?
I do. I would ask your board to consider either July 21st or July 28th.
Do either of those work?
I should be back by both.
July 21st at 10 a.m.
Okay. Does that work for everybody?
I think I'll be back.
Or no?
Oh, you know what?
That's our travel day,
Let's go to the next one.
or at least I'm traveling that day.
I think I'm leaving on the 20th.
I got the voting, there's a bunch happening on Monday that I.
We go to the next meeting after that?
28th would probably be the best.
28th.
We could go ahead and do something on the 28th, 10 a.m.
Okay. We have consensus for that, the 28th at 10 a.m. for opioids. County Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the loan repayment presentation, just to confirm, the 23rd?
Yes, next week for that one. So the consent or the direction would be loan issue on the 23rd, the 28th for the opioid, detailed opioid presentation. Does that cover us? Okay. What? I don't, I mean, if we can, I just don't know what the agenda looks like, so. I think we could be announced on the time. I think we're okay with that. You can figure that out. Okay. So then that concludes this item. Do we want to now handle the behavioral health budget first? That'll be our first one? Okay. So,
That's Budget Unit 4014 and Budget Unit 4015. You heard the presentation yesterday.
we've already heard the presentation. I believe we discussed it. We opened it for the public. All that's been handled, so it's just in front of the board for action at this point. Do you have something, Supervisor?
No,
Oh.
sorry.
That's right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, I am concerned on the presentation in the sense of the local share that we're seeing the increase to the 36 million. I will be approving the budget today. Depending on what happens with the loan, that may change in September for the final budget. But I want to at least give it a chance to see if what happens with the loan repayment, and want to give it a chance for the budget to be reviewed in final budget to see if there's space for that repayment as well. So just
Okay.
wanted to at least put it out there.
Thank you. I guess we're ready for action.
That I move to approve budget units 4014, 4015, and I don't think we made any maybe we
Moreno
did.
has it.
Can you read off the amendments?
Yes, to budget unit 4014, increase revenue in 56-30 by $4,014,467 from the BHCIP bond grant, and increase the South Shore Expansion Project in account number 6313 by the same amount for the same reason.
And I apologize that I know in our initial budget preparation, we did not propose elimination of positions, but upon further review, I did identify several positions for elimination, so I am not sure if that is reflected in the current approval.
It looks like there's one more that's there, but can we change that in final budget rather than having to
Thank you.
regroup and just don't cover those?
That's what we recommend.
No intention.
Okay, so we,
I move that we pass the recommended actions.
I renege my attempt at a motion, and I'll second.
okay, I have a motion and a second.
As
All,
amended.
hang on.
Yes, as amended.
Well, that was in the,
Yeah.
What was that?
it was amended in the motion, in what she said.
Okay, so I was calling for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Then that carries 5-0.
Chair, you may wish to pick up one team, one dream discussion at this point in time.
Yes, so there was, this came up yesterday on a request for discussion with the One Team, One Dream money that had 50,000 in there. At this point, I'm going to support taking that out of the budget. What, did you have something? I don't think with what we got going on, it's not appropriate. I think we can, supervisors that are interested, we can look at that with discretionary funds for the 26, 27 year. I do have some information that may be even changing over to a 2-year cycle anyway. So this would be for the 26, 27 year that we're talking about now. Do we have anything else from supervisors on this discussion?
I just agree that this, if it's going to be funded, it should be funded from discretionary.
I don't know what the status is. I have not had any conversations. And I don't mind pulling it and then getting more information for final budget just to see where things are. I have to say, I guess, what's in my mind, which is we bring other big potential issues and concerns of money being spent in ways that may not be necessary, but yet that doesn't get any traction, but this one does. And I get that this one's an easy one, but the others are much bigger items as well, and yet we're not having deep discussions. We're just kind of kicking the cans down the road. So that's a little frustrating from my perspective, but happy to move on.
I mean, it's still available for discretionary.
I'm more frustrated about the lack of conversation about the other more important stuff.
So I just want to make sure I understand your suggestion, Supervisor. Are you requesting that we not make a change
No,
now?
I'm okay with the change because I don't know if it's happening. If it's not happening, I'll follow up between now and final budget. If I feel that there's a need to argue and fight for it in final, then I will come back in final. So I'm good with the change.
I can tell you what I know right now is we funded 25,000 for this current fiscal year we're in. That hasn't actually been paid yet. That's still owed. They're going to be doing some follow-up to get that funding. Then their event is going on now, would conclude in October. They're working on a decision on whether or not they're going to have this in 26, 27, or delay until 27, 28. So that's what I know.
Yep.
So, okay. Anything further? So I guess, do we need, is it consensus on?
You have it.
What was that?
You have it.
Yeah, okay. All right, then we're,
That's why I'm not commenting. You have it.
okay, sorry. Anything else on, what's the next one?
each one.
Okay. So next on the list. So continuing on with administrative budget units, 7999. As stated earlier, there is no change there. Is there any discussion for that?
I do have a, I guess, question in favor of the previous one. I do have my concerns, and they're completely uneducated and uninformed, but the $50,000 coming from Watershed Protection District to cover the $250,000 for the PG&E design process. Dr. Upadhyay has a very small general reserve within that larger amount. I think it was 89 or 79,000, and I also am concerned about touching the Middle Creek restoration funding that is within that reserve as well. And if we can move that 50 that we took away from One Team, One Dream and moving that into the $40,000 that is necessary to complete, the $50,000 for the PG&E, I would like to offer that as a suggestion.
I could support that.
Okay, we have 3 board members already that are saying to redirect that 40 of that 50 to
No, I
that
think the whole
PG&E.
full 50.
The full 50.
Full 50.
To make
Full
it
50.
250. And if no changes to the reserves that were talked about earlier for Watershed Protection District.
Right.
Okay. So we're moving the 50,000 from One Team, One Dream, which is in object code 2830, and we are going to then transfer that to Watershed Protection District, correct?
For that purpose of that he needed for that project.
Yes.
And if not needed, because he's still negotiating, I would say it could go into the muscles.
It would just go back to general fund.
Okay.
We can readdress it
Yeah.
if it's not needed.
And then, Ms. Moreno and Mr. Carter, just for correction purposes, I know it was mentioned earlier that the $240,000 for the ramp monitoring was taken out of reserves. I don't believe the 30-30-10 is in reserves, so I don't think we're pulling it out of reserves. It's just
We're not.
I think it's 270, isn't it?
It's 270.
270.
Yes.
But I just wanted to check, we're not taking that out of reserves. It's already available in the 30-30-10, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because that was a statement that was made earlier.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the 30-30-10 isn't always 100% available. We have to put some into reserves, even though it's meant still for the 30-30-10.
Okay, did you have something further? Go ahead.
I just asked her to keep going.
So I'm going to go through all of the changes that have been presented to the budget units that have not been approved yet. So next is Sheriff Marine Patrol, budget unit 2205. And so to multiple object codes amounts are moving around to 0111, decrease of $57,692. 0112 is increasing by $75,700. 0113 is decreasing by $7,218. 0114 is decreasing by $578. 0221 is decreasing by $4,905. 0222 is decreasing by $22,122. 0330 is decreasing by $12,761. 0331 is increasing by $54. Object code 11 is decreasing by $317. 17 is decreasing by $2,500. 26 is decreasing by $18,721. 2830 is increasing by $1,500. 2950 is increasing by $6,118, and object code 30 is increasing by $1,000.
questions?
Any questions?
There's no way there's questions on that.
That sounded correct to me.
Sure it was 1,000 and not 999.
Okay, so moving to probation, which is budget unit 2302 in capital asset account 6313. Create a capital asset for construction in the amount of $220,599.
Okay.
Any questions? No? Okay. All right, so next is Public Works Roads in budget unit 3011. So create the, merge together the capital assets which are currently separated out for Socrates Mine Road as PM 1.0 and repairs 2.4 to be renamed as Socrates Mine Road Landslide Repairs PM 1.0/2.4. That was requested just a few minutes ago by the department head because it will be under the same contract. And that capital asset will be in the amount of $2,019,971. And then to include in the 8080 object code, the funding from geothermal budget unit 1918 in the amount of $1,500,000. Any questions? Okay. So next is for the auditor, budget unit 1121 in object code 2380 for the ERP consultants in the amount of $230,000. In the capital asset code 6271 for Workday, $1,064,485. And on the revenue side, in the 8122 for ERP project, transfer amount of $1,294,485. And then on cannabis, budget unit 1072, the transfer out in object code 8123 in the same amount of $1,294,485.
I think that's budget unit 8122.
The budget?
Is it
That's the object code,
okay.
is 8123. The budget unit is 1072
Okay,
for cannabis. Any questions?
We have one.
Just a brief question again. What is old money that is owed and what is new money being made available? Sorry, let me take out the old and new. What is owed that is being entered into the budget and what is anticipated to be owed?
Well, I don't know I can't answer that because these are ongoing costs that have been in there for about 2 years. And when we prepared this a couple of months ago, whatever the statements were as of then, it's going to be different now. And so the costs that have been in there were the estimated cost for the whole project to get through our phase 1 and 2, through the benefit conversion. But
For the ERP consultants, that amount is what's remaining on the contracts. And for the workday portion of that, that's the amount in the contract that will be owed next fiscal year.
yes, yeah. So they're the actual contracted amounts. As far as what is left owed, it's just that, every day they're working, and so every day we're incurring charges. And so it's hard to say exactly what's left, but what you're seeing in the extraordinary request is the contracted approved amounts that have been approved 2 to 3 times already. Nothing's changed with them.
Yeah, the annual cost is weird to me, I guess, because I thought it was $400,000 a year. And you're saying $1 million is for the fiscal, because it was $1 million, and then
We're still implementing. We haven't gone live yet. So we have to go live, and then we'll be on our annual it'll be the annual cost, but right now we're still implementing, so we
So
haven't.
this is still part of the $2.6 million implementation that was part of the original contract?
Yes. If we're talking about the workday specific cost, yes.
I'll be
Yeah,
asking.
consultant workday, so yes, the answer
I'll be
is yes.
asking further questions because I'm not getting like a very firm yes.
Well, sorry, yes, just making sure that we're talking about just workday, but I will follow up with the specific details, and we can even get as of a specific day. So if you want to know the cost as of a day, we'll get that for you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just to clarify, that does involve, this pertains to budget unit 1121, correct?
1121 and 1072.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
No,
Okay.
I don't think.
So next is Public Works, Lamson Capital Projects, Budget Unit 3123. So that is for a temporary loan for cash flow purposes in the amount of 1.2 million, and that's coming from General Fund Reserve 153. So the way it will be budgeted is in 3123, there will be an 8093 in the amount of 1.2 million, that's a negative 1.2 million. 8092 will be a positive 1.2 million. And then in general fund, non-departmental revenue, budget 1120 will be the same. Of 8093 will be a negative 1.2 million, and the 8092 will be a positive. So that will show the money going out and then the money being paid back in. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So next we have Watershed Protection District Budget Unit 8109 is to increase the 8122 on the revenue side to transfer in the 200,000 from cannabis, and on cannabis to decrease the 8123 in the amount of 200,000 for the PG&E engineering. Additionally, the Budget Unit 8109 2380 object code, increase that by 250,000. And then on the amount transferring from marketing and economic development, which is Budget Unit 1892, will also be an 8122 in the amount of 50,000, 8123 in the amount of negative 50,000 to bring that to the 250. Any questions?
No.
Okay. The next one for Watershed Protection District, which is 8109 in object code 0112 for the ramp monitors, increase it by 270,000. In 8122, which is on the revenue side, to bring in the 270,000. And then on cannabis, 1072 to decrease 8123 in the same amount of 270,000. Any questions?
No.
Next, for Watershed Protection District, 8109 is to decrease 2830 by $40,000 and to create capital asset of 6274 object code in the same amount of $40,000. Any questions?
No.
Sheriff Administration, which is Budget Unit 2201. We are moving the budget is there in 2201, but the capital asset listing needs to be reflected as the correct budget unit, which is 2201, not 2202. So no monetary change there. Any questions?
No.
Continuing with Sheriff, in Sheriff Rural and Small Counties, Budget Unit 2206, create the capital asset 6274 for $25,000 and title it New Facility Year 1. Also in 6274 for the object code New Facility Years 2 through 5 for $50,000. Any questions?
No.
Just a
Or,
quick question.
hang on.
We did not approve 2206 yesterday? I thought we did.
I thought we did too.
I have it on here unless I misnoted.
I thought we did, I thought we approved it as amended. Did we?
I am showing that we approved 2206 as well.
I might have just had that as my changes that were made verbally. It wasn't an extraordinary request, it is a self-funded request.
Yeah, I think we did. Like an amendment. I have it.
Yeah, county council, we're all showing it as approved.
Yes, so that shows in my notes too. So for purposes of the motion, the main motion, the first main motion that would come before your board would be to approve the recommended budget as amended. And so while there may be some duplication from coming out of the previous motions yesterday, that would be fine for our purposes here as to these budget units. And then also for further clarification, because upon consultation with ACAO Carter, on budget unit 2205, the walkthrough and the changes and the amendments really were all stated in accordance with page 9 of the slides, the PowerPoint slides that was presented to your board too. So just to clarify that altogether. But for our purposes here, yes, it was, your board did make a motion, take action as to these specific budget units within the sheriff's office, but that can also be made a part of the main motion to approve the recommended budget as amended in accordance with administration's walkthrough with all the latest changes to date.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so next is emergency services, which is under the sheriff's department, budget unit 2704. Object code 6274. There's no monetary change. It's just to rename the capital asset listing on the second line to say fiscal year 25 and on the third line to say fiscal year 26. Any questions?
Don't see any.
So the last two are for museum improvements, budget unit 7202 and the district attorney, budget unit 2110. So both of those were held off, but we have no changes.
Okay.
And that concludes all of the changes.
And then check in with county council, I believe. What's that? I believe I've still got open public comment on as to these amendments. So I'll do that at this time. Is there anybody in the room? No. Is there anybody online? No. I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for any final comments or action.
I move to approve the recommended budget with all amendments as stated earlier and supersede any of the prior motions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Did you have a comment?
I think Mr. Guintavano wants to say.
He wants to say something.
Not so much superseding, but just as a supplement to the prior motions made before, as outlined by administration's reference to the specific budget units that was raised today, as further update to, and as a supplement to prior motions made before, and as the supervisor's body stated, as amended in accordance with those updates and changes.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that carries 5-0. Now moving on.
For the position allocation adjustments is on Sheriff Administration, Budget Unit 2201. Increase the administrative assistant / administrative assistant senior to 2. It's currently at 1. And in Sheriff Jail, Budget Unit 2301, add the sergeant as a limited term. In Probation, Budget Unit 2302, add a Staff Services Analyst 1 as a limited term, 5 years. And then I believe mental health, we are waiting on that until final. Is that correct, to remove those? Okay, so just those 3.
Yeah.
I offer the resolution as amended.
Resolution's been offered.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye. Next.
Next is to approve the capital assets, authorize by motion purchase of capital assets prior to approval, which is the adopted budget with as amended.
Other than the freeze on future financial software, I move to approve the capital asset list as amended.
Second.
Does that work, Mr. Guintavano? We amended it by changing things just earlier, making sure that it was in the correct slots and making sure that all the numbers were there.
So your board may want to have a
Go ahead. Go ahead.
have a discussion on what Supervisor Sabatier, just for further clarification, specifically reference as to the freezing of the software.
A future purchase of software seems to be what is the consensus. So I just wanted to make sure to add it in there because there's financial packages for social services and for special districts that's in there, and it's going to the TGC, which will then come back with a recommendation.
Yeah, but we would sign the contracts will come back to us.
Yes.
So I don't know that we need to freeze it. We've given that direction. We keep it.
Following the direction of going to the TGC and coming back to the Board of Supervisors, I approve the capital asset list.
That we can
Second.
do.
Let's
Second.
change the language.
There we go, second.
So motion and a second, or go ahead.
Clarification, that would be as amended, or amendments.
As amended. I'll get it right.
Second.
So as amended, motion and a second still. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. That was it. Okay. So then we're going to conclude the meeting with no further business. Thank you.
Thank you, admin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Genevieve.